each of those issues, there is a concentrated power problem. Fossil fuel companies, concentrated power. They've been able to accelerate their dominance of the fossil fuel market by bribing off politicians and hiding research about climate change and all that was coming. Food, concentrated power, that our whole food industry is now controlled by just a few large conglomerates, and they're able to then use that power to raise prices in a moment of crisis. Not necessarily going to do the right thing, but just exploiting that power. And then when we look at housing, it's a little more complex, that there aren't just a few companies that are running everything, but once you get down to it, there is a power imbalance, that some people own the property, others have to rent, some people are buying up single-family houses, and they're able to determine what that market is going to look like. So what do we do about that? Well, there's some short-term and some long-term things. Long-term, we need to be making this free market, that we call it, actually free and actually competitive in all different market sectors, including housing. Let's just focus on housing, because I know that's the topic of the day right now here. In my view, that needs to look like building a lot more housing. Part of the problem is we do have a supply issue. There's not enough housing out there, and the housing that is being built is not meeting all the different price points that people are able to afford, whether because of wages or because some people are just not in a position to always be working, because of a disability, because of some life crisis, whatever it may be. And so we need to be increasing the supply of housing both in the rental market and also in the single-family home ownership market. And there are things that can be done at the federal level to both incentivize the building of the housing, and then also making sure that we are, in some cases, directly constructing it. That's long term. But in the short term, we have a crisis on our hands, right? And so I do think emergencies require emergency solutions. And that looks like, to me, and some of these could be long term, and we could think about them being in place for a while, but at least to get a handle on just what is going on here, things like rent stabilization. This is something that is pretty intuitive to me, that you shouldn't just be able to increase prices 30%, 40% year over year for a tenant that you're renting to, that there should be some predictability about just how much housing is going to cost. So rent stabilization is a pretty important thing there. We also, and this isn't the most innovative idea, but at the federal level, a lot of this comes down to, and you're referencing this too, Dan, just enforcing the law. There are laws on the books about what housing needs to look like, the standard that landlords have to be meeting, and so we need to bring resources at the federal level. HUD is the agency at the federal level that's responsible for housing, that we're ensuring that landlords are keeping up with their end of the bargain to tenants that they're renting to. And that will also change the dynamics of that when there is more competition in the market and a higher supply of housing, so that landlords feel a little bit of pressure, that you have options of other places to go to. That's pretty important as well. And so, but that involves also legislation in Washington. And as probably a lot of people know, Washington isn't doing a great job of moving forward a lot of legislation in the area of housing, a lot of others that's going to be impactful and get the resources that we need. So in the very, very, very short term, what can one U.S. Senator do? Start to actually be out there and advocating and highlighting what is the situation, what's going on, using the bully pulpit to bring attention to the experience of tenants and making sure that the larger community and stakeholders at every level of government, local, state, national, know what's up. And so that's definitely a commitment that I would make. But overall, we need to be real about the fact that, like I said, there's a power imbalance in our country right now, and in order to right that, we have to start electing people that are going to be free of the special interests, of the corporate interests, but even more than that are going to places like Washington or downtown Columbus to represent the people with urgency and creativity. And this is, I see Joe Motil in the audience. This isn't complicated. We don't have a policy problem. We have a politician problem, and we need people who, on the housing issue, who are going to bring that level of urgency, that level of commitment and understanding to really occupy positions of government and get things done. So we have those people out there. We just need to start coming together to get them elected. And we're on a very short timeline for my election, with it being May 3rd. But as we know, this is a big picture project, long term, and we're all in this. But we do not have a lot of time to waste, because we're losing. We're losing people. I was just in Licking County earlier today, and a woman told me the reason why she was supporting me was because she has gotten to the place, she's now in her 60s probably, I would estimate, that she's not comfortable seeing at least 30% of our population gone. not able to really make it through day to day. And I would argue, and especially on the housing issue, and why I think there is a big opportunity right now, is that 30%? I would say it's actually over 50% of the population that's feeling like housing isn't necessarily something that's adding up for us. Look at these inflation numbers. Food isn't adding up for us. Gas isn't adding up for us. There's solutions for all of this. We don't have a policy problem. We have a politician problem. So let's start choosing better ones. And on that note, I will stop. But if anybody has any questions, always happy to answer. But I want people to leave with this feeling like we can do this. We don't have to live like this. But it does involve coming out, organizing, pushing, voting, but not just because people have some kind of letter by their name, but because they're actually standing for something. And those options are out there. Thank you.